What if the one thing keeping you trapped in unhappiness is your fear of being disliked? Imagine dropping that fear entirely. No more twisting your words or choices to win approval. No more letting past hurts dictate your present. No more seeing life as a competition where someone else's win means your loss. Just clear, liberating freedom to act from your true self, right now, while still connecting deeply with others. The courage to be disliked reveals exactly how. You realize the past has zero power unless you choose to give it meaning. Every problem boils down to relationships with others, but you can end most drama instantly by separating tasks. What's truly yours versus what belongs to someone else. You stop chasing praise or fearing judgment because real freedom comes from having the courage to be disliked. Value isn't earned through achievements or applause. It's inherent when you accept yourself, trust others, and contribute without strings. Stop people-pleasing. Stop replaying old stories. Stop waiting for permission to feel worthy. Grasp these ideas and relationships lighten, self-doubt fades, and happiness stops being something you chase. It becomes your default. If you're ready to stop living for others' opinions and start living fully, this is where it begins. Chapter 1. Deny Trauma. The opening night begins with a young man weighed down by resentment, convinced his childhood experiences, family environment, and every setback along the way have permanently damaged him and stolen any chance at real happiness. He walks into the philosopher's study, ready to argue that change is impossible when the past has already written the script. The philosopher, however, refuses to accept that premise and instead introduces a radically different lens. One borrowed from Alfred Adler, the lesser-known third giant of psychology, alongside Freud and Jung. Freud's view is etiology. Life is a chain of causes stretching back to childhood. A traumatic event happens, it scars the psyche, and the adult is forever shaped by that scar. Adler rejects this entirely. He replaces cause and effect with teleology, purpose, and goal orientation. Events from the past are not chains that drag you forward. They are material you pick up and use, or refuse to use, to serve whatever goal you are pursuing right now. In other words, nothing is inherently traumatic. An experience only becomes trauma when you assign it that role to justify staying stuck, avoiding responsibility, gaining sympathy, or controlling how others treat you. This shift is explosive. If trauma does not objectively exist as an unbreakable force, then people are not victims of their history. They are co-authors of the meaning they give it. The philosopher presses the point. People can change, and they can change completely, right here in this moment. The world itself is simple. We make it unbearably complicated by clinging to elaborate stories that protect us from the terror of freedom and the weight of choice. Take anger as an example. When someone cuts you off in traffic and you explode, society tells you the other driver made you angry. Adler says no. You manufactured the anger on the spot because it served a purpose. Perhaps to feel morally superior, to avoid looking at your own impatience, or to shift focus away from something else you didn't want to face. Emotions are not floods that sweep over you. They are tools you invent and wield for present goals. Once you see them that way, their automatic quality vanishes. The same logic applies to unhappiness itself. Most people say they want to be happy, yet they behave as if they are deeply committed to remaining unhappy. Why? Because genuine happiness demands courage. The courage to accept yourself exactly as you are, without excuses, without needing to rewrite the past or demand guarantees about the future. It requires living fully in the here and now instead of rehearsing old grievances or fantasizing about a perfect tomorrow. Unhappiness, therefore, is not imposed from outside. It is something you actively choose and maintain, often because the alternative, taking full responsibility for your life, feels far more frightening. The philosopher invokes Socrates to drive the question home: are you okay just as you are? Adler's answer is unequivocal: yes, if you decide to be. Your worth does not depend on childhood approval, past achievements, or future success. It depends on the stance you take toward yourself and others in this precise instant. By the close of the first night, the core message lands. Stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" That question traps you in eternal victimhood and endless analysis. Replace it with, "What purpose does holding on to this story serve right now? And what will I choose to do in the next breath?" Deny the myth that trauma owns you. Embrace that your interpretations are yours to rewrite, and recognize that real liberation is not about erasing the past. It's about refusing to let it rent space in your present. When you stop treating yesterday as today's jailer, the door to change swings wide open. That single pivot, from cause to purpose, from excuse to choice, is the foundation everything else builds on. Chapter 2. All problems are interpersonal relationship problems. The second night opens with the young man returning, still skeptical and defensive. He admits outright that he dislikes himself deeply. He sees only his flaws, feels insecure, pessimistic, and incapable of enjoying people or the world. He insists this self-loathing isn't a choice. No one would pick it if they could avoid it. The philosopher responds that this very dislike of self is a deliberate strategy. By focusing solely on shortcomings and deciding in advance not to like himself, the young man protects himself from the far greater risk of being disliked or hurt by others in relationships. Self-dislike becomes a shield against interpersonal vulnerability. This leads to the core revelation of Adlerian psychology. All problems are interpersonal relationship problems. If you stripped away every other person, if you existed completely alone in the universe, most troubles would vanish. Loneliness itself requires the presence, or imagined presence, of others. True solitude eliminates the concept. Human existence is inherently social. We become individuals only through interaction with society. Our sense of self, our worth, our pain, all tie back to how we relate to other people. Even seemingly personal issues like self-doubt or anxiety stem from this relational context. Feelings of inferiority illustrate this perfectly. They aren't objective facts rooted in reality. They're subjective assumptions we make in comparison to others. You look at someone's success and decide, "I'm inferior," not because of some universal measure, but because you're viewing life through a lens of competition. An inferiority complex isn't a genuine condition. It's an excuse. It lets you say, because of this flaw, height, education, background, I can't succeed, which conveniently excuses effort while preserving the fantasy that the real me is superior if only circumstances were different. Braggarts reveal the same dynamic. Excessive boasting masks deep feelings of inferiority. They overcompensate to hide vulnerability, turning relationships into battlegrounds. Life itself is not a competition unless you frame it that way. When you see others' happiness as your defeat, or their success as a threat, every interaction becomes a power struggle that escalates to revenge. You start seeking ways to hurt back, to prove superiority, all because you've placed yourself in a vertical hierarchy instead of a horizontal one of equals. Admitting fault isn't defeat, it's courage. It ends the cycle of justification and blame shifting. The philosopher explains that real growth comes from overcoming the tasks of life, becoming self-reliant and contributing to society in harmony. These aren't abstract ideals. They're concrete actions, blocked only when fear of relationships makes you avoid them. The concepts of red string, imagined unbreakable bonds of fate, versus rigid chains, self-imposed limitations, highlight how we trap ourselves. We cling to life lies, elaborate excuses like, "I'm this way because of my past," or "people are my enemies," to dodge responsibility for our tasks. Shifting from a psychology of possession, focusing on what you lack or must win, to a psychology of practice, taking steps forward despite fear, frees you. By night's end, the foundation shifts. Problems aren't out there in isolation or history. They live in the space between people. Stop competing. Stop using inferiority as a crutch. Stop turning relationships into battlefields. View others as comrades, not rivals. When that lens changes, interpersonal drama dissolves, self-acceptance emerges naturally, and the path to genuine happiness opens, not through isolation, but through courageous connection without strings or scorekeeping. This night builds directly on the first. Once you deny trauma's control, you see that the real arena for freedom is relationships. Master them by refusing to compete in them, and life lightens dramatically. Chapter 3. Discard other people's tasks. The third night picks up with a young man grappling with the relational core of problems from the previous discussion. He's starting to see how much of his suffering ties to other people, but he still feels trapped, constantly worrying about what others think, craving approval, fearing rejection. The philosopher introduces the single most practical tool for ending that cycle, the concept of task separation. Every human interaction involves tasks, things that need to be done or decided, and the key to freedom is distinguishing whose task something really is. Your task is what you can control, your own actions, choices, feelings, and words. Someone else's task is anything that belongs to their sphere of control, their feeling about you, their opinions of you, their reactions, their judgments, their happiness, their decisions. When you try to take on someone else's task, for example, trying to make them like you, approve of you, or change their mind, you step into their domain and lose your own freedom. When others try to impose their tasks on you, expecting you to live up to their standards, behave a certain way to keep them comfortable or feel guilty if you don't, they are doing the same thing to you. The desire for recognition is the biggest trap here. Most people live as if their worth depends on being liked, praised, or accepted by others. They bend their behavior, hide their true selves, and sacrifice authenticity just to avoid disapproval. But seeking recognition makes you unfree. It hands the steering wheel of your life to whoever holds the approval you want. The philosopher is blunt. Freedom begins the moment you discard the desire for recognition. Not because recognition is bad, but because needing it chains you. True freedom is the courage to be disliked, to live according to your own values, even when it means some people will disapprove, criticize, or walk away. Separating tasks cuts through interpersonal knots like Alexander's sword through the Gordian knot. You no longer have to win arguments, prove you're right, or convince anyone of your worth. You stop monitoring how others perceive you and start asking only, is this my task? If the answer is no, you let it go. You stop trying to control outcomes that aren't yours to control. You stop feeling responsible for other people's emotions or choices. Conflicts that once felt endless suddenly shrink because half the battlefield disappears. This doesn't mean becoming cold or indifferent. It means relating from a place of equality and respect instead of manipulation or fear. You can still care deeply, support others, and build close bonds, but without the hidden agenda of "you must like me back" or "you must change for me." When both people stop carrying each other's tasks, relationships become lighter, more honest, and far less exhausting. The philosopher emphasizes, you hold the cards in your interpersonal relationships, not because you can force others to behave a certain way, but because you alone decide whether to pick up their tasks or leave them where they belong. The instant you stop living to satisfy other people's expectations, you reclaim your freedom. You stop performing, stop apologizing for existing, stop shrinking to fit someone else's comfort zone. By the end of the third night, the young man begins to feel the weight lifting. The endless mental labor of people-pleasing, impression management, and approval-seeking starts to look optional, not inevitable. The path to peace isn't getting everyone to like you. It's realizing you don't need them to. Discard other people's tasks. Accept that being disliked by some is the price of authenticity. And suddenly, the interpersonal world stops feeling like a prison and starts feeling like open air. This night turns theory into daily practice. Every time you catch yourself worrying, what will they think? Or how can I make them understand? Pause and ask whose task that really is. The answer almost always sets you free. Chapter 4. Where the center of the world is. The fourth night shifts the focus from how you relate to others as individuals to how you position yourself in the larger web of human connection. The young man, now seeing the value of separating tasks and dropping the need for approval, still feels something is missing. He keeps returning to a self-centered perspective where everything revolves around his own worries, insecurities, and need to feel important. The philosopher explains that this is the natural result of viewing life through individual psychology, focusing only on the self, instead of holism, seeing the self as part of a greater whole. Adlerian psychology insists that true mental health and happiness come when your ultimate goal is a feeling of community, a deep, lived sense of belonging to and contributing to others without conditions or scorekeeping. Community feeling, sometimes translated as social interest, is not about being nice or popular. It's about living as if you are an equal part of humanity, where your worth flows from participation rather than performance. Most people operate as if they are the center of the universe. Why does this always happen to me? Why don't people understand how special I am? Why isn't the world arranged to make me happy? This egocentric stance creates isolation even in a crowd. You become obsessed with your own image, your own pain, your own lack, because you've placed yourself at the middle of every story. The philosopher asks the young man to imagine the opposite. What if you are not the center? What if the world is full of people with their own valid perspectives, struggles, and contributions, and your role is simply to add value to that larger circle? This shift changes everything. When you listen to the voice of the larger community instead of the loud inner voice demanding recognition, your priorities realign. You stop seeing others as tools for your self-esteem or threats to your status. You start seeing them as fellow travelers who deserve respect simply because they exist. A practical rule emerges. Do not rebuke or praise. Rebuking, criticizing, scolding, and praising, flattering, rewarding, both come from a vertical power dynamic. They place one person above another. Rebuke says, "I'm superior and you're inferior until you fix yourself." Praise says, "I'm the judge who decides when you're good enough." Both keep relationships hierarchical and conditional. The alternative is encouragement, a horizontal approach that communicates belief in someone's inherent worth and capability without judgment or strings. Encouragement says, "I see you struggling, and I believe you can move forward." It fosters courage and community feeling instead of dependence or resentment. Finally, the question of value is reframed. You don't have value because of achievements, appearance, intelligence, or how much others like you. Value isn't a possession to earn or lose. You feel valuable the moment you accept yourself and contribute to others from that acceptance, through small, everyday acts of cooperation, kindness, honesty, or simply showing up authentically. The feeling of community is both the goal and the source. When you live with social interest, contribution becomes natural and self-worth stops being a problem to solve. By the end of this night, the young man starts to glimpse freedom from the exhausting self-focus that had defined him. The center of the world moves outward. Life stops feeling like a solo performance where every mistake is catastrophic and every success must be defended. Instead, it becomes a shared dance, imperfect, interconnected, and meaningful, precisely because no one is the star. This chapter completes a major arc. Deny trauma's control, recognize problems as relational, separate tasks to reclaim freedom, and now reorient your entire sense of self toward contribution and belonging. With that foundation, genuine happiness, no longer chaste or conditional, comes into view. Chapter 5. To live in the here and now. The fifth night arrives as the young man begins to feel the cumulative weight of the previous ideas lifting, yet he still wrestles with a lingering sense of disconnection. Why does life often feel empty or meaningless, even when he tries to apply these principles? The philosopher explains that the root of this emptiness lies in how most people live, either chained to the past through regrets and trauma stories, or anxiously projecting into an uncertain future through endless planning, fear of failure, and what-ifs. True happiness, Adler teaches, exists only in the here and now. The present moment is the only reality we actually possess. The past is a memory we reinterpret to serve current purposes. The future is an imagination we use to justify hesitation or avoidance. When you dwell in either, you escape the one place where action, contribution, and change are possible. Right now. Adler calls this living in the here and now, the essence of courage and freedom. It means accepting that life is a series of discrete moments, each complete in itself, and refusing to let any single moment be overshadowed by what came before or what might come after. A central concept introduced here is eternal now versus linear time. Conventional thinking treats life as a straight line with a fixed beginning, birth/trauma, and uncertain end, death/future goals. So we feel pressured to catch up, make up for lost time, or secure happiness later. Adler rejects this. Life isn't a journey toward a destination. It's a dance of moments. Every instant carries the potential for meaning when you choose to act with purpose in that instant, contributing, connecting, being fully present, without dragging yesterday's baggage or tomorrow's anxiety into it. This ties directly back to community feeling. When you live in the here and now, contribution becomes effortless because you stop calculating long-term payoffs or fearing future rejection. You help a stranger, listen to a friend, do honest work, speak your truth, not because it will earn you eternal approval or fix past mistakes, but because it's the appropriate action in this moment. The reward isn't delayed gratification. It's the immediate sense of alignment and belonging that arises from acting in harmony with others. The philosopher addresses self-acceptance again through this lens. Accepting yourself as you are isn't a passive resignation. It's an active choice made anew in every present moment. You don't need to become perfect first. You start from where you stand, flaws and all, and move forward without self-rejection. Self-rejection keeps you future-oriented. I'll like myself when I'm better. While self-acceptance anchors you in the now. I am enough to act right now. Another key idea is seriousness versus playfulness. Many people approach life with grim seriousness, treating every decision as make or break, every relationship as a test of worth, because they fear the consequences of wasting time. Adler encourages a lighter stance. Treat life seriously in intent. Live with purpose. But playfully in execution. Don't attach your entire identity to outcomes. When you stop treating every moment as part of a high-stakes narrative, anxiety drops and genuine engagement rises. By the close of the fifth night, the young man starts to experience a subtle but profound shift. Life no longer feels like a problem to solve once and for all. It becomes a continuous series of choices made in the present. Past wounds lose urgency because they only exist when recalled now. Future fears lose power because they only exist when imagined now. Happiness isn't postponed to some ideal state. It's available whenever you choose to live fully in the moment, contributing without attachment to results. This chapter bridges everything prior. Denying trauma frees the past. Separating tasks frees relationships. Community feeling frees the self from egocentrism, and now living in the here and now frees time itself. With that, the illusion of a separate, struggling me against the world dissolves into simple, courageous presence. The path to real happiness narrows to a single question asked repeatedly. What is the most useful thing I can do right now? Answer it honestly, act and repeat. That's all there ever was. Chapter 6. The final synthesis, living with courage and community. The danger of striving to be a special being is one of the most pointed warnings here. Many people chase uniqueness, superiority, or exceptional status to feel secure or valuable. Perhaps through extraordinary achievements, dramatic suffering, or being different in a way that sets them apart. This pursuit stems from deep inferiority feelings and a fear of ordinary equality. But specialness isolates. It creates vertical hierarchies where you're either above others, superior, or below, inferior if you fail to maintain the status. It turns relationships into competitions and life into a performance. The healthier, freer alternative is the courage to be normal, embracing equality with others, accepting that you are one person among many, contributing without needing to stand out or prove exceptional worth. Normality connects because it allows genuine horizontal relationships. Comrades, not rivals or judges. You belong simply by existing and participating, not by outshining. Workaholism is exposed as another common life lie. People bury themselves in endless work to avoid deeper tasks. Intimacy, vulnerability, real contribution, or facing personal emptiness. They tell themselves, "I'm too busy," or "my work matters most." But it's often an escape from the risk of true connection or the discomfort of stillness. The philosopher insists, work's true essence is contribution to the common good, not personal accumulation, status, or distraction. When you reorient toward contribution without scorekeeping or burnout, work becomes meaningful rather than compulsive. Happiness is never deferred to after some milestone, after success, healing, recognition, or fixing yourself. It's accessible immediately when you live with purpose in the present. You don't need to earn it through achievements. You step into it by choosing self-acceptance, extending trust, and contributing right now. Postponement is the trap. Presence is the key. The life as dance metaphor returns powerfully as the closing image. Life has no rigid script, no fixed finish line, no audience to impress. It's fluid movement in shared rhythm with others, step by step, moment by moment. You don't dance to reach an end. You dance to dance. Regret fades when you stop projecting backward into what-ifs or should-haves. Anxiety dims when you stop leaping forward into imagined disasters or demands. Shine the spotlight only on the current step, this breath, this interaction, this small contribution. The past and future lose their grip because they only exist when you drag them into the now. These ideas tie the entire book together. Denying trauma frees you from history. Separating tasks frees you from others' judgments. Community feeling frees you from isolation. Living in the here and now frees you from time itself. The result is courageous, connected living. Accept yourself without conditions. Trust others without guarantees. Contribute without needing reciprocation, and move through moments earnestly. The young man finally steps beyond the door. Not as a transformed hero, but as someone ready to choose differently in ordinary days. The courage to be disliked becomes the courage to live fully, imperfectly, equally, presently, with others in the shared human dance. That's the final synthesis. Real happiness isn't found. It's chosen, one present moment at a time. Conclusion. The courage to be disliked. The journey through these 5 nights ends not with a dramatic revelation or a perfect state of enlightenment, but with a quiet, repeatable choice to live with courage in the present moment. Everything builds to this single point. You deny the myth that your past owns you, so the present becomes yours to shape. You see that nearly every struggle traces back to relationships, but you free yourself by separating what is truly your task from what belongs to others. You stop chasing approval, discard the need to be liked by everyone, and accept that being disliked by some is the unavoidable price of authenticity. You shift from self-centered isolation to community feeling, trusting others without guarantees, contributing without keeping score, and placing yourself as one equal part of a larger whole rather than the anxious center of everything. Most importantly, you stop postponing life. Happiness isn't waiting at the end of a long road of achievements, healing, or universal acceptance. It lives right here, in this breath, this interaction, this small act of contribution. Life is not a problem to solve once and for all. It is a series of moments you dance through, earnestly, playfully, purposefully, without dragging yesterday's excuses or tomorrow's fears along. The young man who began the dialogue full of resentment, self-loathing, and excuses walks away transformed, not flawless, not immune to setbacks, but equipped with a new lens. He understands now that meaning isn't discovered or granted from outside. You create it by how you choose to show up in each instant. The greatest life lie, "My life has no meaning," or "I'm not enough," collapses the moment you stop demanding cosmic significance and start living with simple, consistent courage. Real freedom isn't the absence of dislike, conflict, or discomfort. It's the ability to face all of it without shrinking, without fabricating stories to stay small, without handing your worth to other people's opinions or past events. It's the courage to be disliked and still contribute, still connect, still exist fully as you are. If there is one takeaway that echoes beyond the final page, it is this: your life is decided here and now. Not by what happened, not by what others think, not by what might happen later, by the stance you take in this exact moment. Choose self-acceptance over self-rejection. Choose trust over suspicion. Choose contribution over competition. Choose the here and now over endless rehearsal or postponement. That choice, repeated honestly, is where real happiness begins and where it stays. The door is open. Step through. Live. The greatest life lie, that existence is meaningless, is dismantled by asserting that meaning is self-created through contribution and presence. You don't need grand purpose. Everyday earnestness suffices. The dialogue ends with the young man stepping into a new mindset, not perfect, but committed. The afterword reflects on Adler's view. Problems aren't solved once. Life is ongoing choice. Courage to be disliked means courage to live authentically, belong without clinging, and contribute without score-keeping. No more nights follow. The book closes here, leaving the reader with the invitation to apply these ideas immediately. The journey beyond the door is yours to continue in real life. If this feels like the end, that's intentional. The concepts build progressively across the 5 nights, and the 5th integrates them into actionable, everyday freedom. You've now covered the full arc. From denying past control through relational freedom and community orientation to present moment living. Real change starts with the next choice you make, right now.